So welcome everybody. So tonight we're gonna share the surgical guide fund together because I got some feedback, in the past couple webinar, I kind of like went too far, like too difficult. So people reaching out to me and hey David, can you make like, things like just something simple, straightforward from A to Z and the reason why and how. And here we are today. So I'm David, the director of guided surgery division in real-time dental lab. And I'm also the speaker for co-diagnostics and real guide. And I also am a KOL for that guided kit. So my journey, before the guided surgery, if you, live long enough, you might notice this thing, right? That's a, hard disk, very small that actually contains the very first guided software right there who's that is being invented by this phenomenal doctor here. His name is Dr. Scott Gans. When you talk about guided surgery, I mean he is the one that bring all everything together. That all the technology that we use today is actually coming from him. And then he also, have a book that called, computer guided surgery applications, talking about, how, computer guided surgery will help us to, to bone graft, do reconstruction, and of course, for the, implant surgery. So this book actually has been translated in Chinese by this doctor, Dr. Anderson Sao from China. He's actually, my mentor when I first day, joined the dental office. So he's a very good oral surgeon in China. He actually is the first doctor to, bring the guided surgery technology in China and make it, all around like today. So I joined him. I actually work as a, social media content creator. So at the first day of, the day I'm working in the office, I don't even know how many teeth are there in the human mouth. That's, just how I'm started. But, and I work as his, assistant, taking photos, and then he showed me how the surgery go, and he mapping the nerve on the CT scan, showing me how to do, and that's how I, get started. And he also sometimes, drag me on his surgical field, to assist the surgery. I can't forget the very surgery that I attend, my hands so shaking all the time. Whoa, just like that, And then he has a, in-house lab, meaning he has a printer, a 3D printer, and then some, guided software there, so I can learn and can design, learn and then actually learn from my mistake. I design the guide and go to chairs. I see, oh, I messed up here. And then I got blamed by him. All right, that's how I learn, So I learned the guided surgery not behind the computer, but by the surgery room. So that's how that make become who I am today. And then 6 years before, I moved to California in United States, and then I run as a surgical planning specialist there in a pretty good lab, and then gain a lot of experience here, knowing the temperature in United States, and then that's where that I met my boss, which is my another mentor when it comes to restoration, Dr. Brendan Cover. He just, that's how I met him. And then he just brought me into North Carolina. He has a beautiful, beautiful office. And then he also owned a lab, which called Real-Time Dental Lab. So there has very, talented technician there. And then I learned a lot from them. And most, more I have the privilege, to learn side by side in carry prosthodontist to to those phenomenal doctors. They are all prosthodontists. Just a slight a little story. Every from so I'm a lab tech, right? So a lot of time, if you are a lab tech, think about it. Which type of doctor you don't want to work with? I can say the first type of doctor that jumping into your mind will be prosthodontist, right? I mean, is that says something because as a lab tech, working with prosthodontists is not that easy because there's a reason why. I mean, the main reason is they know, what to do. I mean, more than you. So that's how I, learn a lot. But actually, I'm working in the lab. So physically, I'm working side by side with them. So imagine working side by side by prosthodontist. How much that, you're not gonna help me learn, right? So that's, I have the privilege, to design the guy and see my work, in the chair side and then learn from them. Yeah, so that's very good. So before we start, so today we're gonna talk about something easy, right? But even though that's easy, doing easy, making things easy is not easy. So looking at this, so this is an anterior single crown, and you can tell the gum line is not that even, right? So what happened here, right? And then, yeah, so another case I saw from the internet. I mean, from a lab tech's point of view, how you gonna restore these, right? Or is it something worse? I mean, this is, real world situation. Sitting, those cases just sit on the lab tech's bench, this is how it looks. So what is wrong here? So we need to address this, right? So this is a very, very important thing when it comes to, digital implant planning. That is called restoration driven implant planning. Meaning, we don't either we not only look into the bone, where the bone is allowing us, to place the implant, but we also need to know very important thing. That is, where is the teeth belong? Where are they in space, right? So that's I would say, that's the core takeout I learned from all around the prosthodontist is to figure out where is the tooth, right? So another quote here, like say, if you fail to plan, meaning you don't know where's the final crown is gonna be, you are planning to fail. And in the world of guided surgery, I mean, I sing a lot and I cannot agree more, to be honest. All right. So let's say what we're gonna talk today. So what are we gonna talk today? We're gonna talk about restoration driven implant planning, specifically the 3-2 rule, right? So this is, what we need to do. And the other thing is, how do we get there, right? So we're gonna, do a live demonstration because there's no lecture better than showing you what is really happened on my computer. This is very, very fun. So, and then so we will talk about, how to do immediate implant placement, meaning take out the tooth and place the implant same day, right? That's immediate implant placement. And we're gonna design a 4 unit bridge, like support by 2 implants, and then in the aesthetic zone, right? That's critical zone. And then we're gonna talk about so because this era of AI, when I say AI, I don't know if something is triggering you, because nowadays our life is changing a lot. Lots of people, I would say, I see on the news, being laid off because of AI, right? So what might pick up, from today, because AI evolved too fast, right? Until today, the most, the greatest insight I got from AI is, the it's not the AI that's gonna replace you. It's the people who's using AI is replacing the people who don't. Right? If that makes sense. So we're gonna, dive a little deep inside today of learning how AI is gonna helping us to get there when we're doing treatment planning, right? So we're gonna talk about AI model merging tool in RealGUIDE, and then as well as the panoramic curve tool in RealGUIDE. It's all generated by AI, and then we can use an AI tool to do the segmentation to do, either the tooth and the bone. This is so good. The tool. I mean, in the past, it could spend me hours doing that. Today, just like couple minutes. That's the power of AI, right? So we're gonna do a digital extraction in RealGUIDE, and then we're gonna design a tooth supported guide designed using desk guided sleeves. All right. So today's theoretically we what we learned. So I have the privilege, to join one of Dr. Kevin Ling's, lecture in UNC. He's actually a professor, for the prosthodontist divisions, mentor there. So he teach a lot of residents about how to do pros, right? So the very important thing, I pick up from him, especially from when it comes to, anterior case, is that ideal soft tissue and aesthetic outcome aren't magic. They are the result of proper planning. In other words, try to place the implant in the right place. That is critical, right? So how do we place the implant in the right place, right? There's so many things we need to consider, horizontal bone defect, the gum line, soft tissue, smell line, lip position, the profile tools, so much thing to consider. So do we have a guideline, right? Do we? Yes, we do. So this is, on the lecture that Dr. Ling, introduced this, iconic, lecture that talk about, rule of six, right? Basically telling you where to place the implant in the aesthetic zone for single tooth, right? So his teacher is Dr. Cooper, and then who's Dr. Cooper? Let's see. So this year's AI meeting, sorry, AO meeting. I'm too much into AI. I'm sorry. So it's AO, right? Meeting. So those doctors are top of the tops, right? From the left. So you see, Dr. Uber, the king of, bone grafting, right? On your right side, no need to mention, right? Dr. Dennis Tarnow, right? I mean, the father of immediate implant placement and restoration. I mean, aesthetic implant placement. Great doctor. And not to mention, Dr. Honglei Wang, the previous, AI president. Also, he, just, a lot of invention and a lot of, literature coming from him. I mean, they are top of the top, right? So the last doctor right here, Dr. Lyndon Cooper, is, Dr. Ling's teacher. Now you can tell, the Dr. Ling's teacher is how high that is, and this is what we're gonna learn from him through Dr. Ling. So this is the top of the top people talking about, right? So this is the basic of anterior implant placement. So the 3-2 rule. So what is 3-2 rule? So in short, it just place the implant 3 millimeter apical, meaning deeper, right? From the gingival venous. We'll talk about that later. And then 2 millimeter, lingual, or palatal to the buccal bone wall. So 3-2 rule, just like that. And then sounds easy, right? And there's a reason for that. So how to do that, right? So we need to determine where the three coming, the calculation coming from, right? So it coming from the gingival venous, right? So the gingival venous is the top point of your cervical, right? So you look at the cervical, so you measure, okay, you determine where is the gingival venous. So that's your spot to count from 3-2 rule, right? From there. So you need to know. So why is three, right? So why is the three coming from? So the three actually coming from, histology, right? Meaning that's 1 millimeter, thickness for the connective tissue, and another 1 millimeter for epithelial attachment, right? to that. And then and the last one is the sulcus, right? The free gingival, right there. So if you can see, it's either the same for the tooth, same for the implant, right? 1 millimeter for connective tissue attachment, 1 millimeter for junctional epithelium, right? So those two are the biologic width, right? And on top of that will be the circular depth, right? 1 millimeter. That's another one. So combined with three, right? So that's it. So the biologic width is the green right here, right? So we need that above the bone, right? So we can, from there, so we know, there's a 3 millimeter from the gingival venous down there. So that's where the platform of the implant should stay at, right? So that's why. So how to make that in place, right? So if you're looking at a patient like single tooth, like let's say this is a number 7, right? So tools are missing. So the first thing you need to figure out, so where is the gingival venous, right? So this is a treatment planning, even though this is an analog way, but the mentality is the same. Figure out where your teeth is gonna be, right? So this is a restoration driven implant planning. So knowing your gingival venous, and then you start from there, you measure your 3 and 2, your 3-2 rule from there. That easy, right? So if you can, establish that, so nowadays we can read about, a lot of, those from the implant, connect to the crown, those, critical zones, crown design. So you have subcritical contour, you have critical contour, right? Where is that coming from? Not coming from the 3-2 rule, not coming from the biologic width. So this is the nature of the soft tissue, how they grow, how either the tooth or the implant, how they work, right? If you have that 3-2 rule, you have that room, you can have the chance to establish beautiful transition from the neck of the implant to your crown beautifully. So it's not a magic, right? So the same thing. So this is called EBC, zone in the crown design. So basically coming in for the exact same concept, right? So this is how, we know, okay, this is how we gonna implement into our, way to doing, implant planning. Remember restoration driven implant placement, right? We know the height, we know, how buccal or how apical we need to go, and then we can start from there. So we should have, a pretty good, soft tissue outcome and the aesthetic zone, right? So no, we know that, right? Is easier to understand, right? The histology, right? The 3-2 rule, and then the foundation of the 3 millimeter thickness for biologic width. Easy to understand, not that hard, right? But the question is, how do I get there? Right? So no worries. So others will, show you what to do, but I'll guide you there. So for, knowing your implant planning and until your execution, there's something in between, and that's different methodology, right? So there are different ways of doing surgeries. So the first way, easiest the one is free-handed, right? You know the thing on your mind, then you just proceed, right? And there's the other thing is called out of bounds guy, meaning this guy, you have like a suck down, let's say, telling you where is the gingival venous, and then you start from there. So it doesn't control, your hand, very, precisely. You could deviate from what you have, but at least you have something to look at, right? So let's go out of bounds guy. And the other thing to do is, statics guy, which means we call it a lot the surgical guy, right? What it does, it will just generate a guided sleeve, and there will be guided kit, kind of drill, and then just drill from there. So just hold, and you sit on your teeth or whatever. There will be different type of surgical guides as well. So there's just another way to do surgery. And the other thing is dynamic navigation, right? So what I did is, it's basically just a screen. When you move your handpiece, and then the slides on the computer will just show, oh, what's the bone looks like down there. So you can do your wax up there, and then yeah, and just start your surgery from there. It's a very useful tool also. So the other thing is robotic surgery, right? And then the robotic surgery and dynamic navigation are very similar. So the difference is, the robotic surgery will lock you in place at the long axis, the trajectory of the implant. You can only move up and down. You can deviate. You cannot move away. So you basically it's more like, a virtual surgical guide, if you would, right? So there are different, ways doing surgeries, and there are different costs, different turnaround time, and there are some of them are easy to use, some of them are learning curve just so high. So for me, because I make guy all day, right? Really, I mean, today, as we found, along the way, because in Dr. Cover's, office, he has dynamic navigation, he has robotic surgery, and the majority way he's doing surgery will be either freehand, out of bounds scan, and surgical guy. He and the other, very expensive machine, we don't really use that a lot, and there's a reason for that, right? So, if you ask my preferences, I doing guys all day, right? Why not just go for surgical guy? That's the easiest way to do, right? So, as for surgical guy, there are majority three types of them, right? So the easiest way to design is the tooth supported guy. So the reason for that is because the tooth is still present, so we can merge our, the model into the CT scan without too much issues. Because when the tooth is gone, the merge become very difficult, right? So if you are just get started, start with tooth supported. I mean, this is the easiest way for the planning, and then also that's pretty easy, to do the surgery also, because sitting a surgical guy on the teeth, it's just like sitting a let's say a night guard, right? Just sit on the rest on the teeth, then do your guide, do your surgery. That easy, right? Yeah, yeah. So let's get started. So we're gonna do a live demo here. So let me go ahead, stop sharing my screen from here, and I starting. Okay. And I'm gonna share my screen from my designing software. All right, there we go. Welcome to my world. Okay, so now in your eyes, you can see this is RealGUIDE, the software. So I just import the CT scan. So all the supplementals, the material you need is basically the CT scan and the model. So the model, the necessary one will be the working models. Like say we're gonna do the upper anterior today. So the upper model, that's for sure, and the lower is optional. I mean, you can check for the buy or whatever, restoration space, right? And for me, I'll always use a lower model also. And the other thing is, we can have a wax up, before we do the planning. So this is the CT scan. So let's see what do we have today. So this is the patient's model right here. Okay. And then the office scan the file with the occlusion, so we don't have to merge it, right? So we can see, yeah, so they come in occlusion, right? And then the other thing is the wax up, right? So that's the wax up, the anterior, crown that we're gonna work on today. So let's get started. So basically you can see the the overlay here. So if you this is the first time you're seeing this, I know what you think. Meaning it looks so complicated. I know how it feels, but just stay with me. You'll be fine in the end, right? So if you can see here on the left side, so it's basically the workflow, right? You just go from the top all the way to the down, and you're done. That's it, right? That easy. All right. So let's get started. So the first step here is called VOI settings, meaning just basically just place the CT scan where it just mount the CT scan correctly, basically, right? So you can see the face here, right? So if I rotate this, the face will turn left and right, right? Like that. And then, so what we need to do here, we can do, adjust orientation axis, right? So toggle that, you can see, okay, this is the occlusal plane, that's the, midline. So we can do some adjustment here. Let's say when I doing planning, I would like to, make it, basically align to the occlusal plane and the midline there, right? And then you can scroll up and down to see, hey, if your orientation, the XYZ of the, CT scan really favors you. I mean, if you think that's good, then we can keep it there. So that just hit apply. So you just reset, the orientation, the XYZ in the space, right? So this is just like patient like looking straight at you, right? Like that. All right, that's just the first step. So the next step, you can hit next or just click here, same thing, right? If you click here, this is 3D settings, meaning we're gonna tell the software to, render how much, let's say density of the scan. So let me just, rather than talking, let me just show you. If you drag it lower, you can see the bone or soft tissue, kind of, start to get more and more. If you drag it slimmer, right, you can see the bones start to shrink. If you keep it drag, it will start to show the only the crown, right? So it just basically tells the software, how much, rendering you want from the computer. So it will comes in, you can click here. So that's for the bone. And if you click here, this is for the soft tissue. This is pretty amazing, isn't it? Right? And then you can click on the tooth, right? So I would like to do some adjustment. I will just, add this view. I just want to see the root, right? Okay. I mean, we're pretty good here. So we have the bone, soft tissue, the tooth, and we can hit next. So the next thing is the merging. So the merging is where the AI starts, right? So if you want to import, all your file, just hit import here, and then just select the, the name of the file. So you can just use, so the first, you can call it anatomy, right? And when before the merging, I would just I found it the easiest. Just keep the original position XYZ for that, and I'll show you real quick. So that's hit that. So I want an upper model, right? So okay, it's being imported, right? So you can see it's not aligned. So we don't worry about that for now. We just keep throwing things in. And then the other thing is we're gonna do an autonomous and then keep original, which is the opposing, the lower, and then yeah, it's in. So it's occluded, right? And then lastly, we're gonna import the wax up. Let me see, where is the wax up? Okay, so let's keep original position. All right, so that's the wax up. Yeah, so I kind of cheated a little bit. So the wax size actually has been done in orientation. So yeah, it's in position already. So we don't have to worry about that. We just so I just want to show you the first one, the merging, right? So because we're gonna do the guide, on a model, and we're gonna do the implant blending on a bone, right? So if the merging of two, right, the merging of the bone and the model is off, your planning is gonna be off. So the merging, uh, so yeah, when I, actually in my entry, level guided surgery, I should mention, which is I'm going to do it right now, is, guided surgery is not 100% accurate. And And there's a lot of reason for that because, in the guided surgery, as you can see now, there are so many steps to get that, right? The CT scan, the intraoral scan, and the merging, the designing, and not to mention the surgery itself, right? Each one of the step will have deviation. I mean, it's systematic. You can't live with it. I mean, you can't get rid of it. It will stay there forever, right? If somebody tells you, hey, the guided surgery is 100% accurate, there's only two reasons for that. First, the people just saying that, just, pretty new to this area, And the other reason for that is he's not saying the truth, period. Right? So guided surgery is not 100% accurate. So, and when the planning phase, if deviation, happens, the, majority part happens here, meaning, the merging between the model to the, CT scan. This part is critical, critical, critical. And then as me, working as a, implant planning specialist for this couple of years, one thing I learned is, the merging ability is one of the core ability for surgical planning. Real. Okay. But yeah, let's do that. So let's do the anatomy merging. So all we need to do just hit match right here. And then we need to merge to the DICOM. DICOM just, the CT scan, right? And then merge to the DICOM. And then let's, select the matching. Hit OK. And then, all right. So how to, use so usually in the past, we select point, anterior, posterior, all that, right? And then do the merging. For today, no more, right? This is a button right here called assisted. So this is assisted is the AI tool. So let me show you how. So if you click that, the computer will start to think. We just keep running, running, running. And then, yeah, so I mean, it'll take some time for the computer to think through it, right? All right, I think we're there. So it's merged like couple, like 20 seconds, 10 or so, right? I mean, faster than I do, manually. So let's see the result. Is that gonna be a good merge? So let's see from the, sagittal view. Yeah, I mean, you can see the crown right here is merging are basically pretty good, right? So posterior, anterior, and let's see from sagittal view also, and we can see from the side, right? And then also we see from the occlusal view. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? Just one click and that's it, right? So that's the first. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that's hit apply. So that's the first match. You merge the working model there. So you say, so what about the posing, right? No worries. That's when people do the merge, you can see the bite, on a CT scan, the bite is open, right? Usually when the patient takes a CT scan, you have to open the bite to bite on a stick or something, right? And then actually this is a better way to do because the contour for the crown would just be so easy to merge to, compare when you bite, had the patient occluded, right? You cannot see this that clear, right? So, but because we're gonna do the upper, design right now, so we don't merge the model to the lower arch because the bite is not a bite, right? So we need to keep the same bite, right? So what we need to do is go matching STO to DICOM. Here's come a little, confusing, but no worries. Just select here, same as, the anatomy one, and then hit OK. And then boom, it's there, occluded. Nice, right? So it's not, merged to the lower model, but it's now, merging to the the true occlusion on the intraoral scan or the model, right? So so actually the wax out doesn't merging well, right? So I'm gonna fix it a little bit here, just a little. So if you do that, you can manually, tweak it and you can turn this and then, so this is critical actually, because as I said, the merging of the the wax up. This is where the crown is gonna be, right? So this part is actually critical, critical, critical. So I'm kind of, just try to make the webinar go in because it's kind of, out of the position. But you get my point, right? If you know where the crown go, then you can try to, figure it out, where is the implant should go. All right, so I just quickly do the, wax up position for now. Let's just say we're happy with that. A little more. Yeah, let's just say, this is the wax up, right? Actually, it's not, but yeah, you get my point, right? So, all right, so let's do that. Okay, next. All right, so next AI tool here is another very good tool. It's called panoramic curve. So, CT scan is 3D things, right? So panel curve is, you cut along the arch and then smash it, into a 2D view, basically, right? So usually, we, slice to the upper and then, drill through the arch. That's in the past. But today, with AI tool, just hit maxilla or mandible. So we're gonna be working on the upper, right? Just hit maxilla and then hit assisted. And let's just wait for the magic to happen. All right. So basically, the panel curve is here. All right. So you can see, the occlusal plane. I mean, if you're not that happy with that, you can still, tweak it a little bit. So you can see, the panel view just simultaneously, be changed. So this is so good tool. And you can, okay, the midline is not there. So I'm gonna, change the arch, just tweak it a little bit, right? I mean, based on how you tweak it, your panel view is gonna change. I mean, simultaneously. I mean, how cool is that, right? Not to mention, a occlusal view, you can tweak it like side by side. This is, the good of, AI tool that right now we have, right? So just see next. We're happy with that. All right. So next step is wax up, right? So you can do your wax up here, or we did it beforehand, so we can skip this part. Oh, righty. So now it's time for the treatment planning, right? So you can see our plan today. The patient, the root tip has been cut away from 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. So the plan here today is to place the implant on number 7, another implant on number 10, and then do a 4 unit bridge. That's our plan. So let's do that. So this stage is the most fun hassle, right? Just implant planning. Come on, this is the best, right? So that's, you just scroll through the spot, to the position. So you can also see, the slice of it, right? Thin bone, right? So we're gonna, struggle a little bit. So I picked this case for a reason. All right. So let's hit number 7. So let's say we're gonna do a Zinvis, right? That's a great implant, by the way. Alrighty. So let's say TX. Let's see, we can, just drop it in spot. I'm a little lost here. Okay, that's number 7 right here. Let's put it in. And then because it's a, couple unit bridge, right? The 3 line implant is not gonna take the load. It's not fun. So we're gonna do it through 7. Oh, my God. All right. So maybe today we're gonna use a slim ring one right here. All right, let's swap. Sorry. So let's see. We can do a let's see, tensor, right? That's the, so we're doing immediate here. So we need some, primary stability there. So the Astra, you know, EV prime taper, right? That's the one. All right. So we have the length, right? I'll just, place it for now. Let's figure out the the tiny fine tweaking later. So just place one right there. And that's the implant number 7. So let's do the other one and number 10 and just hit number 10. We're gonna do the exact same implant there. Oh, righty. Oh, he's gonna be very struggle today. All right, cool. So we have our implant in position, right? And then knowing all our, so the position for that. So the bone at number, 10 is not the best. So let's start working on number sevens first. So number 7 is kind of, more, user friendly. So you can drag here, because we placed the implant, the wax up already. So as we can see here, so this is the gingival venous at the central and that's lateral. Let's say, yeah, this is a pretty good spot. So let's see if we come here, see the gingival venous is right there, right? That's a good spot. So let's see if we can do our 3-2 rule there. So from the gingival venous down 3 millimeter, you say, oh, this is deeper than that. Okay, let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, so because we know that it's kind of, a little difficult. So this is pretty much, the ridge, and then we're gonna see again the distance from that to there. Yeah, we're kind of, 5. So knowing this, we're gonna do the ground's kind of a little bit longer because, this is the real world situation. I mean, we try our best to hit our 3-2 rule, but, this is what we have, right? So this is a real world situation. Sometimes, even though we know it's a 3-2 rule, right? That's we need to follow, but sometimes we have to do 4, and here, maybe we're gonna go 5. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's good. Before the surgery really happens, you can really figure out, how what abutment you're gonna use and how's the contour of the crown, and then in and to the relation to the adjacent. If you wanna need to adjust a little bit, meaning when the crown go deeper, the gingival venous will go up deeper also, right? So if you want to consider maybe do crown lengthening at adjacent, just make the the gong line looks more symmetrical, right? If you factor that all in, right? So you see how much bone you have, then you can maybe figure it out. Hey, if the patient has a high smile line, which is we do have it right here, right? So you can tell. So usually we should assess this from a photo, but we don't get a photo for the patient, but either from a CT scan, you can kind of tell the patient has a pretty high smile line. So is that a good point that you might talk about to the patient? Hey, maybe you can, while we place the implant, maybe consider some crown lengthening, maybe, right? So that's the power of treatment planning, right? Based on what you have, what you are facing, and you can try to figure out if there's any alternative, try to make things better, right? So that's, the benefit, plan everything beforehand, right? So when I do, single tooth here, so I usually like to see how the bone looks like and how the root looks like, right? So that will introduce another two AI tool right here. So we kind of, gotta jump around, not too much, it's just here, right? So stay with me. So here to this tool right here that calls segmentation. Let's just hit that. So you can see there's 4, function to select from. the first one we're gonna do is the bone right here. So, in the past, to generate a bone is so hard, and this is, to so and the root, it is so close. Oh, I already generated one, but yeah, we can go back. So basically how you're gonna generate segmentation for the bone, basically just segment, just hit segmentation. You want to do the upper or lower? Do you want to include the teeth or not? And then just hit segmentate the bone, and it will take some time, for the computer to think about like 1 minute or so. And this is what you will get. I mean, I didn't generate this. The computer did it. I mean, look how beautiful it is. The extraction socket. I mean, the distal portion of the sinus lateral wall, not to mention the sinus itself. I mean, and the hard palate, right? The floor of the nasal floor. I mean, this is beautiful. It's just done like that, right? So maybe 1 minute you got this file, right? So easy, so nice. So we can, generate this file, into the planning. All right. So we have the full model here, right? Just so we can visualize, right? We don't need to do this part. This is just, my working preferences. Life makes my life easier because I can visualize what is happening, you know. So to navigate, because we kind of like, have different object right here. So if you can see here, the object menu, you just toggle it on. You can toggle it on and off, and you can either, change the color of it like that. And then on top of that, you can, right click and then just make it transparent, so you can see, right? So this is the relation to the bone. How cool is that, right? And then, yeah, so the next thing is want to see the roots, right? So let's go back to generation segmentation. So this function right here is the tooth. So let's hit that. So this is all done by AI also. So I already generate those. So beforehand, I mean, if you start from scratch, you just hit automatically, segmentation, or just select the TUI and click on the CT scan. It will just generate the teeth and the root for you. How cool is that, right? So that's another AI tool right there. So let's finalize that. Alrighty. So let's move forward, override that. Okay, now see, this is what I saved by visualizing, right? So if you take that out, you can see, hey, I mean, if I'm in a, good socket, and what's the relationship between the implant to the adjacent root? This is, the beauty of, digital planning. Like this implant right here, right? We're too close to the adjacent, right? You can't really see on the panel view. So, but you can tell, on the, 3D view easily. So we can, swing the implant, right? Like that. And then just track it away, right? I mean, how easy is that? Visualizing, utilizing all these, 3D tools. All right. So having those, we can toggle the rules away. And then now it's because we're gonna do a a 4 unit bridge right there, right? So usually you shoot for because this case right here is considered more like an FP1, type of restoration. So we kind of shoot for the center from the incisal edge. And as for buccolingually, let's see. All right. Let's see if we can, in terms of, okay, this is the ball. You don't want to push your boundary too much, right? So this is a struggle coming from, right? So when the this is the bone allows the implant to go. I mean, if you place the implant like that, I mean, based on the bone, no problem, right? But when you go back to the, restoration, you are actually coming out from the buckle side. I mean, that sucks, right? I mean, that's, that not that cool. So is that an issue? Yes. Can we fix that? Also, yes, right? So knowing, now the implement like abutment, like dynamic abutment solution, right? You have the chance to use, angled abutment, right? So even though, we know our trajectory of the implant is going that way, and naturally we can, measure the angle here, you know like if you do a like about like 20 degree opening, we still can open the screw axis at the lingual, right? So that's the beauty of treatment planning, right? Digital. But yeah, I think we can still push a little more because the bone resorption happens on the ridge a lot, right? But on the tip of the implant isn't that critical. It's not that critical, right? So we can also, tilt the head back a little bit. So we still, so the, lingual side of the neck of implant, because they're very rich at the blood supply, right? So you always use so less, bone resorption around the implant. So that's great, right? So that to doing that giving us a better trajectory, at the so we are basically aiming for incisal age, basically. That's great, right? So we can push our boundary there, kind of like, pushing to the limit, but oh, this is a little pushy here. Okay, so we still, have to see 360. All right, so we can now match it again. Our angulated, screw channel. Yeah, the 15 millimeter, 15 degree, even 20, that would do the job, right? I mean, so as long as, we're not, too crazy, close to the to the side of the implant, I think we'll be fine. Or, knowing this implant is too long, just make it shorter though. So this is 11, but these are 4 unit breweries, I mean, so now you have the chance to debate. Okay, for longevity, I'm gonna push it to longer implant, right? Or 11 is good enough. So I mean, at this point, but as well, you're taking more surgical risk right here. So at this point, you can really sit down and consider, right? If you are the surgeon, you can, select from risk and long-term, short-term surgical risk or long-term, stability outcome, which is better. At this point, there's no rule of thumb or other right answer for that. At this point it's all preferences, knowing the doctor, I mean the patient, like cranking things, eating crab with the teeth, maybe go for 13, right? If the patient like is 90 or is 80, 90-year old, doesn't eat a lot of hard food, and maybe you can try to push, shorten it to reduce the risk. So at this point you can really choose your route. So that's the beauty of treatment planning right here. Okay, so we let's say we're happy with this, and then let's see the other side. Okay, and here we know this is more challenging right here. Okay, I mean this is it, right? This is what it is, right? So you can try to push your boundary, and then sometimes it just, I mean, doesn't work, right? So we know right from here. Okay, we rotate around. Are we good at 3-dimensional? Everywhere. I think we're almost there. Okay, so the struggle, right? This one is gonna, if you use a straight bombing, it's gonna blow from facial for sure. So hard, right? And but we know, like we know the bottom height, right? We can, we can figure out the angle, like that, right? So let's say a 20 degree, a little pushy, but I mean, it could save me right from there. Or, I mean, if you were willing to take more risk at Baco, right? So that's the struggle, right? If you could take more risk at Baco, we can, reduce the angulate, I mean, increase the chance to open a buckle more, right? Using angle abutment, right? So yeah, so at this point, it's really, I mean, there's a different ways, the safest way, to place in the bone will be just, you know, like that, right? But you don't want to restore this case, right? You don't want it. So yeah, so with digital tool, you will, have the chance, to to get this through your mind beforehand. That is great, right? So let's say we're happy with that. So of course, because it's a couple double unit bridge, we still have to see, the deviation, angle between them. That will be how to see the the angle between implant. Just hit here, show in implant angles. So it's telling you, so you can set one as a master, so that tells you, how, diverse they are. This is 14, 15 degree. So if we use a, angle abutment, can we do the things back? So we can, factor everything here, from the planning. That's the beauty of it. All right. So next, once the treatment planning has been verified, the next one is to generate a guide for that, right? So as you can see here, since we're doing, uh, prime taper implant, but I don't have the prime taper guided kit though. No worries, right? There's a very, very nice sleeve right here. So that's called, DAS guided kit, right? So you can, work with any implant, major implant system. Just, in the sleeve system, search for dynamic abutment, right? And select this sleeve right there. And then it will just, it's a universal sleeve that work with all, major implant, plan, implant systems. So it will just, be there, so easy to use. And then you have different offset you can select from. Let's say, maybe, the default is like hitting the gun already. If you want to raise it higher, right? Stay away from the gun, maybe something like that. So we raised the sleeve by two, right? So no worries, because that guided kit has a, implant driver, comes with different offset also. And then when you do the drill, you just, add two, you just drill deeper accordingly, right? Using the that guided kit. So that's the beauty of it. So we can use the that sleeve right here as well. Search for dynamic abutment, and then boom, it just worked for that. And then we can raise the sleeve, let's say like that. Okay, so now we are above the gun. So after the the extraction, we can just place the guy on and do the surgery. So the next problem here is hey, the two is right here. How am I gonna decide the guide on? Is in the ground. You can make the guy out of it. I know we can't, but with digital tool, we can just remove the ground. Easy, right? So you may think about, is another AI coming for that? Yes, real guy will, but not today yet, right? So the next, generation, as their developer already told me, it will be, new fun feature coming out, just digital extraction. So cool features. I mean, can't wait for that, right? But until now, we have to do it manually. So, to do it manually, let's go to another function here called sandbox. So this is a playground in real guy. You can basically do anything you want. So let me show you. So for example, we want to edit the mesh, right? So let's come here, go edit the mesh. And then we want to cut the ground, right? So there's a very precise way, just cut around the gun line. That's a very precise, but that takes a lot of time, right? So for my real world practice, right? I'll just use the cut tool, and then don't cut the adjacent, right? Because we might need to get there. So this is what I would do. And then just hit um, cut, and then boom, that teeth is gone, right? So because all the tooth is gonna, be extracted, four of them, right? So, but for the surgery, we can ask the surgeon, hey, maybe just take out those two first, right? And then or you want to take want them to take on, that's also doable, right? Just do your thing here, and then they'll just cut and close the loop. So you don't have to do too crazy here, because you will see when I do the guy design, I'll let my guy not to touch this spot, so we won't have any fitting issue right there. So can do a quick call right here. So this is all manual, right? So hopefully in the future, in an actually near future, when they release the software, we will be able to to use the AI extraction tool there. That's so cool. And then after the crown being extracted, there's a smooth tool right here. Basically, just like wax knife, like ooh, right? How cool is that, right? So you can basically want to do anything you want, just to the model. It's just like a lab party right now. So cool. I love this part. Right. So just do your thing here and there. All right. So now we have the clearance for everything here. Right. I think now we're hitting. No, we're fine. If we're hitting, we just cut more. Right? So just in case, because this area is kind of a little questionable. All right. And then here, all right. So that's the end tool. So that's digital extraction. Let's be done. All right, cool. All right, so the next thing is, maybe to rotate the sleeve. To do that, you can, do a little rotation on this like that. We can change the angulation for that. I mean, you don't have to, but if you want, this is where to find it. Okay, so now everything is ready to go, right? Meaning, the master model is ready, and everything we do now is to define where the guide is sleeve gonna be, right? That's it, right? So the next step is just to, generate a sitting jig to sit on the remaining crown and hold the sleeve in place and do the surgery. And let me show you how. So next step, guide design. So right here, this is a guide design module. Before we move forward, just click a save, just in case whatever runs, computer, right? That happens. So guide design, let's move on. So for guide design, because it's a sit-in jig, it's a removable appliances, right? So very important thing is to define the paths of insertion, right? This is what we learn from, from the dental school or the lab. So this is, you can aim for the, okay, so I'll say for your survey line, to maximize all the contour as possible, and then set. All right, so this is set the paths of insertion from the view, and then you can see the color side is the undercut. So, and the beauty of digital tool, just if you hit generate undercut, it will just generate an undercut model. Oh, see, the software just died, right? Oh my god. Okay, so let's just jump right back in. So there's a reason I hit save, right? So digital world, that just could happen. All right, just go back in. So yeah, I know that's gonna happen. I mean, could, but and that happened, sadly, right? So let's go back in. All righty. So let's quickly go back to the guide design module. And then the paths of insertion, that's the set, and hit generate on a card. All right, so you would just block out all the undercut on the model. And then, yeah, this is, the undercut being blocked out, right? You can see from there. Oh, so maybe not sharing my screen right here. So let me hit share it again. Okay, I think we're back. Okay, So this is the undercut model, right? All the undercut has been blocked away. So that's good. So that's heat next. So at this point, we can toggle, the sleeve on and then just use the spine tool, to generate the position of the guy's supporting area. So for that, because the anterior tools are gone, so I will like to cover, some uh, anterior crown there. And it's pretty much there. And not gone too much. And then that should be good area. And then next, just hit generate the guy. So the surgical guy, will be generated based on this. And another, news for you guys. So next release for, real guy is gonna has AI surgical guy design also. I mean, how cool is that, right? So we'll see how that turns out. Okay. All right. So now the surgical guide has been generated. So let's toggle the transparency to see that. So as I mentioned, because those part are, digital extracted, right? So what I usually like to do, I will use a scope tool, to cut all these away, to stay away any, uncertain area like that. So sorry, I just hit delete the guy by accident. All right. Okay. So that's heat transparency, and then we scope those out. Okay. So for the same reason, we're gonna scope this and in the middle, wanna cut this away also. All right. So, at this point, we don't, really have to touch anything. And in the middle, I think the plate is kind of, too thin. So that's not good. So I'm gonna, just cut it away and I'll fix it later. Right. Now I'm basically generate two guys. So, and now I'll fix it later. I'll show you guys how. All right. So yeah, the reason why I do that is I don't want to touch anything in between, right? Because that's kind of not that predictable because that's digital extraction. And then you can open some round window, to have inspection window at the side, to see, if the guide is pretty much sitting down. And that's next. All right, so the guide has just been generated. But I mean, that will work, but it sucks. You have to do it two pieces, right? So there's another solution that's save this file first. And then there's a solution for that to connect them back in real guide. Let's go back to the playground, the sandbox. And then there's a function here called custom bar. So this thing is really cool. So you can, usually I use like to use a 4-5 diameter. So like this area, we can easily connect them back with a bar. And you look at this. Right. This is so cool. I love this function. So that's one of the reason I love you guys so much. So yeah, I mean, doing this, we're reconnect the two guys into one, right? But we're only connect one, it's just he create bar and almost there. And then, so actually this is not a good design because it's on the top of the sleeve. We want some clearance here, here also. We'll do that. We need a bar right here. So one bar might not be enough. Then just create more than that, right? Just keep creating bar like that and that, right? So the way I design guys, I really like, those central bars because they pass the geometry, center of the gravity geometry center, center of the geometry, gravity of the center. You know what I mean, right? So, and then but one thing to make sure, just look onto the interior side, of the guy, because that's gonna have a heel fitting right there. And then that's one bar. Let's hit create. And then let's hit another new bar right there. And just create another bar right here. We're gonna do the same design right there. And and let's check. Okay, this is protruded inside. Let's drag it out. See here. There's nothing there. That's beautiful. And then just create bar. And then now just we have created 3 bar. Then we can create, reconnect the guy into back into one, right? And just here we can merge all visible bar. So that will, generate into one single file right here, like that, one single file, right? And we can end the tool for here. So there are, still 2 objects, the yellow and the gray, right? Now we need to merge those 2 files into one. So we're gonna use the Boolean operation right here. So that's just say we're gonna use the surgical guy as object B and the merge bar as an object one, right? So that just, hit apply. So you would do the combine, 2 file into one like that, right? Cool. So end tool. So actually I'll usually do some fine tuning here, at the sharp edges, but for the sake of time, I'll just, stop right here. All right. So that is, the digital planning of a tooth supported guide for a 4 unit bridge into implant using desk guided sleeve and those, connector as one, single implants. So that's, the live demo for today. Hope you learned something from there. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen from here and then let me go back to my keynote here. All right, so that was a live demo, right? Continue to share, right? We share about, how to merge. We do the AI, the tools, the AI of the merge, the AI of the panoramic curve, and the AI of, the bone segmentation and the tools segmentation and the struggle between, the surgical and restoration, right? Such a struggle, right? Isn't it? Right? And then we learn how to generate the surgical guide for that guided sleeve. And then for the live surgery, this is one of Dr. Ling. It's not the same surgery, right? But it's coming from Dr. Ling's. What he did, just take out all the teeth that we need to do, and then just take the guy, sits on the teeth, that easy, right? So that's two supported guide for immediate implant placement, right? So this is how how the surgery really works. So yeah, that's basically what we have today. So yeah, couple cases. So we are gonna run this webinar for monthly basis. So if you have any case like this one, so struggle one you want to discuss about, feel free to email me the information what you want to do, the CT scan, the intraoral scan, and we can, study the case together. And if you want to contact me, to reach out for any more question, how to use the software, how that guided kit works, how which implant has different, selection for the abutment, just please feel free to reach out. And please, if you would, just follow me on the social media. I will periodically, post on different things that we, involved in today. So that's a wrap up for today. We talk about the restoration driven implant planning, the 3-2 rule, right? Then we talk about, the single immediate implant for 4 unit bridge, AI model, AI panoramic, AI tools, AI boom, and there are more AI tools are gonna coming out. So stay tuned for that. So thank you so much for you guys joining me tonight to have the surgical guide fun together. So I'll see you in the next time. Thank you so much.